Hey everybody, this is Thomas with Gun Rights for Illinois. I'm here with Anthony Bartosiewicz. Did I say that right, Anthony?
Yes, you did.
Very good. Anthony, you're with March for Our Rights, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you've been in gun rights advocacy for a couple of years now, right?
Yeah, I've been an advocate for the Second Amendment for years past. I started March for Our Rights. However, in the last 2 years, I have been, the main part of my advocacy has been through March for Our Rights.
Perfect. And obviously, March for Our Rights is similar name to another group that's kind of on the other side of the argument. Is that
Just a little bit.
intentional
Just a
or
little bit.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
well, it's actually a fun story behind that. So when the March for Our Lives happened, um, I was the first person to propose the idea of March for Our Rights, and I just kind of tossed out into a group that I'm a part of. It's called Prager Forces for Teenagers, who are interested in politics, right? And I just kind of tossed out the idea. I was like, oh, we should start a March for Our Rights instead of March for Our Lives. That's pro Second Amendment. And people hopped onto it, and I'm like, you know what? Let's just go along with it and see where it goes. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
I think a pretty big part of it was tactical, but the other part of it, like, we're not necessarily trying to attack them as an organization because, we're all teenagers. We all have the same end goal in sight. We all want to lower the amount of people dying from gun violence, but we both have different solutions, and that's about it.
I agree with what you said 100%. I mean, everybody, the way I look at it is ultimately everybody, except for a very select few elites, want to be safe. And I believe there's a difference between wanting to feel safe and wanting to actually be safe. And to live in a world where you think that banning guns are going to make you safe is feeling safe versus living in the world where you acknowledge that bad people exist and there's not much you can do about it other than protect yourself. That's actually being safe. So, I want to commend you. When I was your age, I didn't think about these things. I was much older before I
Thank you.
really kind of woke up. So the world needs more people like you. So I really do want to commend you for what you're doing in
Thank you.
promoting, gun rights advocacy, and spreading the word amongst not just your other teenagers, but as well as adults. I think you're motivating some adults to get involved. They're looking at someone like you saying, "Hey, look at this guy," and no offense, he's just a kid, but you've accomplished more than some adults have. Tell me a little bit about what happened last year in Chicago.
So last year in Chicago, we were working on getting a permit, and we couldn't secure one before the time came. So we tried to go to Millennium Park because on the ACLU, they said, Millennium Park doesn't require a permit. It's not in any of their bylaws. So we went to the Millennium Park. We were like, okay, we're going to set up here, meet specifically here. And then in the week leading up to the march, after we had announced our location and all that stuff, and people were RSVPing, then Father Flager tossed up his Dan Ryan shutdown.
Same
That,
day.
yeah, same, you know, for the same day at the same time. I wonder why. Um, so that tossed a wrench in things, and we got to Millennium Park. We set up where we were planning on setting up, and then they moved us to I can't even remember exactly the name of it, but it was a fountain, and so we were moved, and then the Dan Ryan was shut down, so people even if they got there, then they went to the meeting spot, and then
No one was at the
we
meeting
weren't there.
spot because you were elsewhere. So
Yeah,
basically it was you were being screwed over, long story short.
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
that was the first annual March for Our Rights.
It's not even
And you
like
learned.
we were smaller back then, and I'm expecting a larger turnout this year, just because of what's been going on in Illinois. But I guess we can probably get to that later.
Sure.
But like we met a lot of headwinds, which in my eyes, just as a teenager, that shows me that people are scared. Like they didn't want us there, but they realized that they couldn't just completely shut us down because it's run by the government, and the government can't limit our free speech. It's the First Amendment. It's our First Amendment right to go
Well,
out
they're
there.
not supposed to, but they do. And
Yeah,
as you
exactly.
learned.
Yeah, as we learned, but met a lot of headwinds, but we still made it. I think we got around like 40 strong at that event,
And you
and
had some media presence.
yeah, a lot. Yeah, we got on local media, local news stations. A lot of um, the board for the march got onto the Washington Post in an interview. Um, that was fun. I was one of the people. The article for the Washington Post starts and ends with me. And then once you get onto that kind of stage, then you really figure out, where everybody stands and how everybody views you once they know that you're pro Second Amendment, because a lot of those comments were very, for the lack of a better term, derogatory.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, I mean, there were multiple that called me a school shooter. There were like, it was actually pretty messed up. Like I was reading through it. My mom was reading through it, and she started flipping out. And I'm
As a
just reading
mom
through.
would.
I'm sitting there and I'm laughing because like like there's nothing else that you can really do. It's a bunch of people that are hiding behind the computer screens, a bunch of keyboard warriors that are just like typing up their little message, thinking that it's going to get to my head, but just roll with it and go.
That's good because you have to have thick skin to put yourself out there. You're obviously putting yourself out there. You obviously have the thick skin, so you've got the credentials to push for this because you're going to be attacked all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
It's going to be from your peers. It's going to be from people that you thought you got along with, and then they're going to find out that you're a gun owner, and through the brainwashing, all of a sudden you are
I'm
the
a bad
bad
guy.
guy. Yeah, and obviously we know that's not the case because of all the laws and everything else that are put into place. If you're a law-abiding gun owner, you're really the best of the best. So you were at Illinois Gun Owner Lobby Day. And tell me a little bit about that.
So iGold was a lot of fun. So we went there and we were going to support iGold no matter what. But working with John Coyne,
Mm-hmm.
we went up to the executive of iGold, Richard Pearson, and we walked up to him and we were like, hey, if you could mention my name, mention March for Our Rights, that would be heavily appreciated. We're a nationwide movement. We're here to do the same exact thing that you guys are fighting for. So if you could mention us, that'd be great. And then we kept on pushing him. And then, as you said earlier, we got acknowledged at iGold. My name got acknowledged, and I spoke at the Rotunda. That was a good few hundred people that heard the message that I wanted to send across on that day.
I would say there was a lot more than a few hundred.
Really? Well, I mean, like the people who were like actively paying attention to it.
Got it. Okay.
But
But they brought you up to the front row on the floor, if I remember correctly, and they announced who you were and what you were trying to do. And unofficial estimates, there was probably about 6,000 people, 7,000
oh
people
yeah,
there.
no,
So
yeah, yeah. I was talking about like because they had people speaking in the rotunda, and
right, right.
Rhonda was one of the people who spoke in the rotunda, and like from the people who I like saw at least on the ground floor, it was a good few hundred people who were actually paying attention and not waiting in that big line to get to JB Pritzker's office.
Yell at Pritzker or Madigan.
Yep. I mean Pritzker who wasn't in, and then all the representatives who were coincidentally in session.
Right.
I
Wait,
guess
was
it's
that your first iGold?
Hmm?
Was that your first iGold?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's pretty typical. Anyone that doesn't want to talk to you will be hiding. And that's okay as long as they know that we're there. Big numbers matter.
Yeah.
So you're going to have another event coming up pretty soon,
Mm-hmm.
and that's going to be another March for Our Rights. This time it's not going to be in Chicago because too much pushback. So tell
Yeah,
me about the
too much
upcoming.
pushback, yeah.
Tell
Yeah, I
me
guess
about the
that's like
upcoming event.
so the upcoming event it's gonna be at Memorial Park in Wheaton. Um it's gonna be from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. It's they're gonna be, a couple high profile speakers. We're working on the high profile speakers, but there's a big number of well known speakers that are gonna be going there. Quasi from IGOT's definitely gonna be there. Rhonda's gonna be there. Rep Skillicorn is gonna be there, and Mary from Million Moms are gonna be there. And so far, it's looking like it's gonna be shaping up to be a pretty good event.
Excellent.
It kind of sucks that we couldn't be in Chicago. I definitely wanted to hold it in Chicago this year, but we definitely don't have the financial backing to be able to do that. since I'm kind of like, studying for finals and trying to balance all this stuff and, studying for the ACT and stuff like that, because it's junior year, everything gets all crazy. I kind of, delegated some of the workload to my mom, who has been very supportive of me throughout this whole entire process. So thank you, Mom. And she was the one who figured out the extreme price tag that Chicago has set on rally permits, which is around $15,000. And that's
so
just
free speech is not so free.
Absolutely not. No. It seems to have a pretty hefty price tag on it nowadays. So amendments change, but they shouldn't change like that.
Right. Absolutely. What ultimately is the goal for a March for Our Rights? What message are you trying to get out there? What are you trying to accomplish?
Well, okay. So the main goal of March for Our Rights is to try and show that, one, not all of the youth of America is here to like completely tear our Constitution to shreds, because it's not true. I mean, I'm an example of that. My friends are examples of that. Two, we want to spread awareness about the true facts of the gun control debate. So we want to educate people, not belittle them, but we want to make sure that they actually know, the true facts. So, mainstream media is kind of screwing people over by telling people the false narrative of, guns are bad, guns kill people. Yes, guns kill people, but they kill people in self-defense in the right hands. And the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And obviously these are points that you've probably heard before, but they get repeated because they're so true. So, we want to send across the facts to people who may not agree with us, but, we want to find some kind of not common ground, but because, we don't want to continue giving up on our rights, but we want to change minds.
And so that's a great point, changing minds. Would you agree with me that changing minds is accomplished more through, there's an old saying that you catch more bees with honey than you do with vinegar. Would you agree with me that if you're polite and pleasant with people, you're going to be able to change their mind a little bit easier than if you're yelling and swearing at them?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why last year at the march, I tried to stage an entire thing of civil discourse where people could ask our panel, any questions, or they could come up and try and talk with us. But the thing is, when they signed up, they had an entire rule sheet, and I think it was like 6 points, and all of them revolved around keeping a civil conversation. And if they could not keep a civil conversation, if either party couldn't do that, then it's immediately off the table, because there's no point. Because once you start yelling at each other, then it just becomes a shouting match and it's completely pointless.
I agree 100%. I try to guide my debates by the rule that once you insult somebody, you've given up your position and you've conceded victory. I believe our side of the debate has facts and logic, and we don't need emotion to cloud things. We don't need to be yelling and cursing. It does sometimes get frustrating when you feel like you're arguing with a wall, but there are better things to do than yell curse words. So I very much applaud you for being ahead of the curve in many aspects, but as far as debate goes, you're certainly far ahead of the curve in that regard. I don't know, did you mention the date for the event?
Sorry, I did not. July 20th.
So July 20th in Wheaton at, what was it, Memorial Park?
At Memorial Park, yes.
At Memorial Park, 10 a.m.
10 a.m. to 12 p.m.
Is this a kid-friendly event? Should we be bringing our sons and daughters with us?
Yeah, it's obviously a kid-friendly event. I mean, Wheaton's also a very kid-friendly place. So, after the event or before the event, if you want to show up a little bit early, you can walk around downtown Wheaton. There's a nice toy shop. Wheaton, it's under construction right now, but it's a nice little place. There are a lot of different shops that you can go to. There's a lot of history behind it. So, you don't have to, if you live far away, you don't have to take like a 2-hour-long drive just to be there for another 2 hours and have to drive back 2 hours.
Right. You're saying you can make a day of it and have a good time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What else should we talk about at this point?
Well, at this point, I think what I would definitely like to get across is, anybody who's on the fence about going, or, they're like, oh, I might have other plans. Well, might is not having other plans, therefore you should be here. And the reasoning for that is because, look, we for some stupid reason elected J.B. Pritzker into office, and our rights are extremely at risk right now. Extremely.
Tell me about that.
So, J.B. Pritzker has stated that, he's going to sign basically any gun control bill that comes to his desk. So anything that the extremely Democrat House and Senate pass, he's going to sign. So, anything that comes out, all the bills, I think you're the one who really gets people to fill out the witness slips. And I've been filling those out. And it's so amazing in a very bad way how many witness slips that I have to fill out, because it's just one, it's so much writing. It autofill some of the information, but it's still a lot of writing. And two, the amount of bills that are being passed that are here to infringe on our rights is absolutely astounding. I can't really, for some reason, I'm completely blanking on, specific examples, but I'm pretty sure that, everybody knows about them. There was a, requiring universal background checks, I think is
sure.
This very one that
most recent one.
Yeah, most recent one. And, that's a pretty basic infringement. Universal background checks aren't going to work to solve anything. It's just going to make it a lot harder to buy a gun in general, which in the end, it's honestly what the politicians want. So, your rights have never really been more at risk. And that being a fact, you need to be out here because we need to show that we're not going down without, putting up a fight.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, probably twice already, you're way ahead of the curve as far as everything goes in the gun rights advocacy. I think you're more informed as far as what's going on, even though you didn't have specifics. You're talking about universal background checks. FIX the FOID is what that bill was called. They were going to have universal background checks. They were going to have fingerprints. They were going to raise the price of the FOID fee. So, all of those things that almost pass. And just for anyone who's watching, that was Senate Bill 1966 called FIX the FOID. It was a shell bill. Kathleen Willis, of course, was the sponsor of the bill. And it did pass the House, not by much, but it did pass the House, and it stalled in Senate committee. So there are some outlets that are saying FIX the FOID is dead. FIX the FOID is technically not dead. It's still on life support. It can be brought back. So we've got to stay on top of things. I didn't make up this saying. I forgot exactly who did, possibly Alexander Hamilton. It was definitely one of our founding fathers, but the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and we shall forever stay vigilant. Because they're going to keep throwing bill after bill after bill at us. And it's never going to end. The war for our rights has raged on for all of time. It's going to continue to keep raging on. And it's nice to have the next generation of warrior that's going to stand up and defend everyone's rights. And the thing is, Anthony, you're in the 1%. And when I say that, I mean quite literally. We look at the numbers, and there's 2.3 million registered gun owners in the state of Illinois. If we adjust for children and so on and so forth, we can easily say there's 2 million people that own guns in the state of Illinois. Mm-hmm. And when we get these witness slips, we have 5, 6, 7,000. And when we have the attendance at iGold, 5, 6, 7,000. And if we really sit down and do the math and crunch the numbers, we know that literally less than 1% of gun owners are standing up and actively doing something to fight and defend their right to self-defense. It's, you have a right to self-defense, but that right is being chipped away and eroded. And if we don't defend that right, we're going to lose that right. And to have the next generation of advocate that's fighting for that right is absolutely awesome. And it really, it's inspiring even for me. I've only been in the fight maybe 7 years myself. But the fact of the matter is there's so many people that do nothing that, to have your group, your age group, to come in and pick up the torch, and not even pick up the torch. I mean, you're lighting your own torch and running with it, and that's just a great thing. So, one last time, just for everyone who's watching, give me the date, the time, the location, and also if any way that someone can contact or reach you, throw that out there, and we can end the interview.
So date July 20th, location Memorial Park in Wheaton, Illinois, time 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. The easiest way to contact me would probably be through my Facebook. So Anthony, it's just my first and last name, and you can send a message to me through that. Or you can also go through the March for Our Rights Facebook. It's just March for Our Rights, and it's a page, and you can send me a message through that. And
I'll put those links up there for everybody, so they'll be able to get a hold of you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you need to add?
No.
That's great.
That's good.
It was my pleasure to talk to you, Anthony.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thanks for taking time out. I know this is finals week, correct? I mean,
Yeah.
So you better get to studying so that you can get into a good college and put these civilian disarmament advocates out of business, so to speak. Okay?
All right.
All right. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.